Testing, testing. All right. Welcome to the Public Service Commission's administrative meeting for August 6, 2025. First item of business is to approve the minutes from our meeting of July 23rd, 2025. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. There are 3 items on today's consent agenda. Item number 1 is a request for certification of a renewable energy facility from Barton Wind Power LLC. Item number 2 is an application to supply natural gas from Gas South LLC. Item number 3 is a name change notice from Holcomb US Inc.
Okay, regarding item 1, I move we approve the application and issue a renewable energy facility ID certification number, direct the applicant to establish a REC account with PJM GATS within 30 days of certification, and direct the applicant to notify the Commission within 30 days if the information on which the application is based has changed. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye. Regarding item 2, I move we grant the company a license to operate as a natural gas supplier in Maryland for the customer classes and service territories applied for and recommended by staff. Direct the company to provide training materials specific to its Maryland operations to the Commission staff 30 days prior to their utilization of the materials in Maryland, and direct the company to notify the Commission within 30 days of any changes in the information to the information in the application. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye. And regarding item 3, I move that we note the filing. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Item number 4 on the administrative agenda is a request from MCI Metro Access Transmission Services, LLC.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Jennifer Purvis, appearing on behalf of staff and in place of Lily Tiska, the analyst on this buck sheet who is out today. On July 2nd, 2025, MCI Metro Access Transmission Services, LLC, DBA Verizon Access Transmission Services, filed a request for a waiver to overturn the North American Numbering Plan Administrator's denial of the company's request for 3,000 blocks of numbers. Verizon Access submitted an application to NANPA for 3,000 blocks of telephone numbers to meet the request of a business customer, which the company could not meet with its existing inventory of numbers. On June 20th, 2025, NANPA denied the company's request on the grounds that the company did not meet the 75% utilization requirement in the 1,000-block number pooling administration guidelines. NANPA's decision does not consider whether there is a verifiable need for the numbering resources. Federal Communications Commission Order 01-362 establishes a safety valve mechanism that delegates authority to state commissions to overturn NANPA denials of numbering resource requests when a verifiable need for additional numbering has been demonstrated. State governments must work within this mechanism because it is federally mandated. Staff finds the reasons for which the requested numbering blocks have been sought in this case constitute a verifiable need for numbering resources, and that NANPA's denial of the company's requested 3,000 blocks should be overturned. Pursuant to applicable federal regulations, staff recommends the Commission overturn the NANPA decision to withhold the numbering resources specified in this filing, with the expectation that NANPA will grant Verizon Access's request for 3,000 blocks of numbers as described in the filing. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Any questions for staff? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Doug Smith, Vice President, State Government Affairs and for Verizon and the parent company of MCI Metro Access Transmission Services. We support staff's comments, analysis, and recommendation for approval. We thank you and we appreciate your consideration and respectfully request your approval.
Any questions? Oh, Commissioner Linton.
Thank you. Just one. Good morning. If I had the numbers correct here, no pun intended, after you finish with the providing the numbers that have been requested by the customer, you're going to have some left over. What do you do with those?
They remain in our pot of numbers. It's a inventory made available for any customers that might come and not have such a large demand as 3,000 with specific numbering protocols.
Okay, so we're approving your request to provide numbers for the customer that's asking for right now,
Correct.
but you're going to get some surplus afterwards,
That's correct.
and you could use those for anybody, for anything at all.
And we would.
Okay. Are we involved at all in terms of what those other numbers might be used for?
Not
Or is this-
necessarily, no. NAMPA is truly the mechanism that allocates numbers and number pooling.
Okay. And so they would follow the usual review process to make sure that those numbers are used for purposes that are appropriate.
But yeah, usually they're not nearly as large as this, so it's a fairly routine process.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Anybody else? All right, so I've talked about this before because we've gone through this any number of times. And I guess in this particular application, you were just under the 75% number, but I take it that a miss is as good as a mile when it comes to the approval by the administrator.
The uniqueness of this request was that not only did they want 3,000 numbers, but they wanted the 3-digit
Right,
and an X
sure,
to
yeah.
not start with a 9.
Mhm.
That really shrunk the ability of us to use the inventory that we had.
Mm-hmm.
Therefore, we had to ask for relief.
Okay. And the only way to get this changed is, this is a mandate from the FCC, or is this a statutory mandate?
This is an FCC
All
doctrine.
right, so they would have to do this, so,
They
but
would
until
have-
they make some change, we're going to continue to go through this.
Yes, and I should note that Maryland is, of the 10 landline states that I'm responsible for, Maryland is the only one where we have numbering waiver applications, and I think that's just a reflection of the health of the economy in the state, because these are triggered by
Right.
renovations, construction, new customers, and very large requests. So that's why you see me repeatedly. It's a good
Yeah.
sign.
Okay, all right. Okay, I move we overturn the NAMPA decision to withhold the numbering resources specified in the company's filing, with the expectation that NAMPA will grant the company's request for 3,000 blocks of numbers as described in the company's filing. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbie. I vote aye.
Item number 5 is a notification from AT&T Enterprises LLC.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners again. Jennifer Purvis appearing on behalf of staff and in place of Lily Tiska. On June 16th, 2025, AT&T Enterprises LLC filed a notice of its intent to discontinue the AT&T Digital Link service in Maryland, effective on or after October 1st, 2025. The service is being discontinued because of the decline in the number of business customers using traditional access lines for voice communication. AT&T Digital Link service is a competitive exchange service offered to business customers that permits outward and inward local calling capability from a customer's premises. There is one existing business customer subscribing to AT&T Digital Link service. AT&T provided notice on September 16th, 2024 to that customer and plans to send a follow-up notice. The notice complied with COMAR requirements and included the number of an AT&T service representative that will discuss alternative solutions and schedule the customer's migration to an alternative service, AT&T IP toll-free service, by October 1st, 2025. The public will not be harmed because AT&T will continue to provide other replacement services to business customers in Maryland, such as AT&T ReadyLine service, IP Flexible Reach service, and AT&T IP toll-free service. Business customers may also obtain similar services from another competitive carrier in Maryland. The discontinuation of this service will facilitate AT&T's efforts to operate more efficiently, yielding long-term benefits for customers across Maryland. Staff recommends the commission note the filing. Thank you.
Any-
Again, I'm available for questions. Excuse me.
Any questions? All right, seeing none, move we note the filing. Commissioner McLean,
Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barve. I vote aye.
Item number 6 is another notification from AT&T Enterprises LLC.
Oh, good morning yet again, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Jennifer Purvis appearing on behalf of staff and in place of Lily Tiska. On June 16th, 2025, AT&T Enterprises LLC filed a notice of its intent to discontinue the AT&T toll-free Megacom service in Maryland, effective on or after October 1st, 2025. These services are being discontinued because of the decline in the number of business customers using traditional access lines for voice communication. AT&T toll-free Megacom service is a dedicated telecommunications service offered to business customers that allows inward toll-free number calling from stations located within a state to an AT&T toll-free Megacom service central office where available. There are no business customers subscribed to this service via the intrastate AT&T service guide in Maryland. The public will not be harmed because AT&T will continue to provide other replacement services to business customers in Maryland, such as AT&T ReadyLine service, IP Flexible Reach service, and AT&T IP toll-free service. Business customers may also obtain similar services from another competitive carrier in Maryland. The discontinuation of this service will facilitate AT&T's efforts to operate more efficiently, yielding long-term benefits for customers across Maryland. Staff recommends the Commission note the filing.
Okay, I move we note the filing. Commissioner McLean,
Aye.
Commissioner Linton,
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman,
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. I vote aye.
Item number 7 consists of revised tariff pages from Verizon Maryland LLC.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Alden Manka on behalf of staff. On June 13th, 2025, Verizon Maryland LLC filed a revised tariff page to modify its Miscellaneous Services Arrangement Tariff, PSC MD number 211, to limit its Universal Emergency Number 911 service to existing customers. This service is a routing service that provides for the routing of calls from callers in specified area codes to public safety answering points. This service is categorized as a business service, and the customers are 911 authorities, not residential customers. In response to a staff data request, Verizon stated, "Limiting the service in question to existing public safety answering point customers will not affect the ability of Verizon's end-use customers to call 911. The proposed future limitation of this service is a part of a nationwide Federal Communications Commission-led transition to next-generation 911 service, which is an IP-based routing system that provides more information than the traditional wireline service. This has led to a decrease in demand for Verizon's traditional wireline 911 routing service as customers transition over to the next-generation 911 service. Therefore, staff recommends the Commission accept the tariff for filing with an effective date of August 6, 2025. Thank you, and I am available for questions.
Questions? All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. I'm still Doug Smith, Vice President, State Government Affairs for Verizon. We support staff's comments, summary, and recommendation for approval. And I only note that the Next Gen 911 service that we're talking about here is an improved product for those public service answering points. And it allows for better location identification as well as accepting text, videos and photos over a 911 service.
Okay, any questions? So, if I remember right, there's been state legislation the last couple of years dealing with 911. Is this part and parcel to this upgrade of technology, or?
There's been a transition across the entire Verizon footprint of going from the traditional Universal Emergency 911 service, the traditional, what we're used to having, to this next generation that was really triggered by an FCC initiative.
And so, the local entities that, I guess, run their 911 operations, is there any upgrade that they have to do to?
Yes, that's certainly, they've got to do an equipment upgrade as well. So when they purchase this new service, the new Next Gen, they've got to improve their training as well as their CPE, their customer premise equipment.
Okay, I move we accept the tariff provisions for filing with an effective date of August 6, 2025. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sushman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. I vote aye.
Item number 8 is a request from Approved Energy 2 LLC.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Charles Herbert on the behalf of staff. Item number 8 on the administrative agenda is a request from Approved Energy 2 LLC to amend its electricity and natural gas supplier licenses to no longer include permission to serve residential customers. Staff reviewed the instant filing and determined that, as approved, request is a request to modify its licenses rather than cancel them. The company will remain licensed and will continue to be required to maintain its bonds and pay commission assessments. The company confirmed via email dated July 29, 2025 that it never served residential customers. Further, the Electric Choice monthly enrollment reports submitted by each Maryland utility confirmed that Approved has not served any customers whom the utilities consider to be residential. Thus, Approved has never owed any obligations to residential customers. Accordingly, staff recommends that the Commission grant the company's request. Thank you, and staff is available for any questions.
Seeing none, I move we grant the company's request and remove the permission on its electricity and natural gas supplier licenses to service residential customers. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. I vote aye.
Item number 9 is a request from Telco Pros LLC.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Andrew Schlicht on the behalf of staff. Telco Pros filed a request with the Commission to remove permission to serve residential customers from its license. Staff found that Telco Pros has an active bond and is in good standing with SDAT. Staff recommends the Commission approve Telco Pros' request at this time.
Any questions? So is the situation similar to the one we just did? Did these guys ever serve residential customers?
That is staff's understanding. We have no indication that this company ever served residential.
Okay. All right, I move we grant the company's request and remove the permission on its electricity and natural gas supplier licenses to service residential customers. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Item number 10 is a request from Global Energy LLC.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Once again, Andrew Schlicht on the behalf of staff. Global Energy filed a request to remove residential permission from its license. Staff found Global to have an active bond and be in good standing with SDAT. Additionally, staff found no indication the company ever served residential customers. Staff recommends the Commission approve the company's request.
Okay, I move we grant the company's request and remove the permissions on its electricity and natural gas supplier licenses to service residential customers. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. I vote aye.
Item number 11 consists of revised tariff pages from Delmarva Power and Light Company.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Lucy Shea on behalf of staff. On July 2nd, 2025, Delmarva Power and Light Company filed clean and red line copies of its related tariff pages to reflect the Maryland Environmental Surcharge rate for fiscal year 26 of $0.000151 per kilowatt hour, approved by the Commission in its general notice dated June 30th, 2025. The environmental surcharge reflects an increase in the current $0.000150 per kilowatt hour rate applicable during the period that began July 2024. The monthly rate impact of the revised environmental surcharge for a residential customer using 1,000 kilowatt hours per month will remain the same as in fiscal year 2025. Staff recommends that the Commission accept for filing Delmarva's proposed tariff revision with an effective date of July 2, 2025. Staff further recommends that the Commission waive the 30-day notice period required by the PUA, Section 4203A. Thank you.
Any questions?
Doug Mike Keel here on behalf of Delmarva Power and Light. I have nothing to add. I appreciate staff's analysis.
Okay, with that, I move we accept the filing, except for filing the proposed compliance tariff revisions with an effective date of July 2nd, 2025, and grant the company a waiver of the 30-day notice requirement required by Public Utilities Article 4-203A. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. I vote aye.
Item number 12 is a notification from the Potomac Edison Company.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. Lucy Shea on behalf of staff. On June 27, 25, Potomac Edison filed its Montgomery County Fuel Energy Tax surcharge adjustment, which reflects the Commission's assessment factor for fiscal year 26 pursuant to the Commission's assessment notice dated June 16, 2025. It also reflects the Montgomery County Fuel Energy Tax, which remains unchanged. Montgomery County, Maryland imposes a fuel energy tax, the MCFET, on energy consumption within the county. Utilities are liable for tax revenue associated with the energy consumption and have been authorized to assess a surcharge to Montgomery County customers to cover the energy tax. The fuel energy tax rates for the period from July 1, 25 through June 30th, 2026 for electric customers are 0.1106 per kilowatt hours for residential customers, 0.01978 per kilowatt hours for non-residential customers, which are unchanged from the last fiscal year. The fuel energy tax is grossed up for the fiscal year 26 Commission assessment rate of 0.003205, and the gross receipts tax of 2%, which is unchanged from last fiscal year. The gross up calculation results in a Montgomery County surcharge billing rate of 0.113227 per kilowatt hour for residential customers and 0.0202499 per kilowatt hour for non-residential customers. The bill impacts for electric residential customers using 1,000 kilowatt hours per month will be $11.32, which is unchanged from fiscal year 2025. Staff recommends that the Commission note the filing with an effective date of July 1, 2025, and waive the 30-day notice period required under Public Utilities Article 4-203A. Thank you.
Any questions? Actually, I got one. So I see the filing for Potomac Edison, and after that, the filing for Baltimore Gas and Electric, but it strikes me there's a third company that operates in Montgomery County. Is there a reason why they're not here?
Yes, Commissioner. I think you're referring to Pepco.
Right.
Pepco did file on Monday, the 4th of August, which was too late to get on the agenda for today.
Okay, so they're just kind of in the queue for
Yes.
some. Okay, all right, fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, so
Yes, thank you so much, Chairman Hoover and Commissioners. Susan Shipper with Venable LLP on behalf of the Potomac Edison Company, and nothing to say other than that we thank staff for their comments and their recommendation.
Okay. All right, seeing no questions, I note the filing with an effective date of July 1, 2025 for the company's updated FY 2026 Montgomery County Fuel Energy Tax Surcharge in Montgomery County customers' bills and grant the company a waiver of the 30-day notice requirement required by the Public Utilities Article 4-203A. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Item number 13 is also a notification from Baltimore Gas and Electric Company.
Good morning, Chair Hoover and Commissioners. This is for BGE Montgomery County Fuel Energy Tax for fiscal year 26. It reflects the Commission's current assessment factor for fiscal year '26 pursuant to the Commission's notice dated June 16, '25, and Montgomery County Resolution 17-1123 adopted May 22nd, 2014, which remains unchanged from 2014. The revision to the MCS, the MCFETS, reflects the Commission's current assessment factor for 2026. It reflects the, I think I've repeated myself. It also reflects the F26 Montgomery County energy tax and the gross receipts tax rate. The Montgomery County fuel energy tax rates are 0.1106 per kilowatt hour for electric residential customers and 0.01978 per kilowatt hour for non-residential customers, and 0.09515 per therm for gas residential customers, and 0.17026 per therm for non-residential customers, which is unchanged from the prior period. The MCS is grossed up by the 26 Commission assessment rate of 0.003250, and the gross receipts tax of 2%, which is unchanged from last fiscal year. The gross-up calculation results in an energy fuel charge billing rate of 0.113227 per kilowatt hour for electric residential customers and 0.0202499 for non-residential customers and 0.0974104 per therm for gas residential customers, and 0.1743047 per therm for non-residential customers. The fuel energy tax monthly bill impact for an electric residential customer using 1,000 kilowatts per month will be $11.32, which is unchanged from last fiscal year. And the impact for a gas residential customer using 57 therms per month will be $5.55, which is unchanged from the last fiscal year. Staff reviewed BGE's calculation of the proposed fiscal year 26 MCS billing rates for residential and non-residential customers and found them to be correct. Staff recommends that the Commission note the filing with an effective date of July 1, 25 and waive the 30-day notice period required under PUA, Section 4203A. Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioners. Joel and Michelle on behalf of BGE. We thank staff for its analysis, and I'm available for questions.
Seeing none, I move we note the filing with an effective date of July 1, 2025 for the company's updated FY 2026 Montgomery County fuel energy tax surcharge in Montgomery County customers' bills and grant the company a waiver of the 30-day notice requirement required by Public Utilities Article 4-203A. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. I vote aye.
Item number 14 consists of revised tariff pages from the Hagerstown Light Department.
Good morning. This is Lucy Shea on behalf of staff. I just have one more. The Hagerstown, Maryland Environmental Surcharge has, for fiscal year 26, has increased from 0.000150 per kilowatt hour to 0.000163 per kilowatt hour for Hagerstown. The monthly rate impact of the revised environmental surcharge for a residential customer using 1,000 kilowatt hours per month will be 16 cents, which is 1 cent higher than the rate impact of the environmental surcharge that was in effect July 1, 2024 through June 30th, 2025. Staff recommends that the Commission accept for filing the proposed tariff revision of Hagerstown with an effective date of July 1, 2025. Staff also recommends that the Commission waive the 30-day notice period required by Public Utilities Article Section 4203A. Thank you.
Okay, I move we accept for filing the proposed compliance tariff revisions with an effective date of July 1, 2025, and grant the company a waiver of the 30-day notice requirement required by Public Utilities Article 4-203A. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Suchman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Item number 15 consists of revised tariff pages from the Potomac Edison Company.
Good morning, Chair and Commissioners. Mark Riley on behalf of staff. On June 30th, 2025, Potomac Edison filed clean and red line copies of its revised tariff page to reflect the updated Maryland environmental surcharge rate of 0.00159 per kilowatt hour for fiscal year 26, in compliance with PUA Section 7-203A1 and Commission's June 30th, 2025 general notice. The environmental surcharges to become effective on all bills rendered on or after July 1, 2025. Due to the proximity between the issuance of the general notice and the established July 1 date for the MES annual updates, Potomac Edison also requests the Commission waive the 30-day notice period required by PUA Section 4-203A. Staff has determined the environmental surcharge rate reflected in the revised tariff page complies with the Commission's June 30th FY 2026 environmental surcharge factor general notice. Staff recommends the Commission accept for filing the proposed compliance tariff revision of Potomac Edison with an effective date of July 1, 2025, and the Commission waive the 30-day notice period required by PUA Section 4-203A.
Good morning again. Susan Shipper, again on behalf of the Potomac Edison Company. And again, nothing to add further other than thanking staff for its comments and recommendations.
Okay, I move we accept for filing the proposed compliance tariff revisions with an effective date of July 1, 2025, and grant the company a waiver of the 30-day notice requirement required by Public Utilities Article 4-203A. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sushman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. Aye. I vote aye.
Item number 16 is a request from the Baltimore Gas and Electric Company.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Drew McAuliffe on behalf of staff. On July 11th, 2025, BGE filed a request to extend its commercial fleet programs to the earlier of either June 30th, 2026, or the launch of the proposed EV Phase 2 programs and a completion of a request for proposal for a program implementation vendor. BGE is requesting permission to continue operating its current suite of commercial electric vehicle fleet offerings, which were approved by the Commission in 2022 and are otherwise due to sunset on September 14th, 2025. The company's request would not require any additional funding beyond what was already approved for the programs in 2022, and staff does not recommend closing a program and possibly reopening the same program at a later date while awaiting Commission decision on the Phase 2 programs. Therefore, because there's no additional costs to extending the program and to keep continuity within the program, staff recommends the Commission grant the extension requested by BGE. Thank you, and available for questions.
Any questions?
Good morning again, Commissioners. Joel Michelle on behalf of BGE. We thank staff for its analysis and recommendation, and we are available for questions.
So this program is mainly incentives that you provide or the state provides, but there's no federal incentives, right?
That's correct. There's no federal dollars involved here.
Okay. All right, I move we grant the requested extension authorizing the company to continue its commercial fleet program. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sushman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe.
Aye.
I vote aye.
Item number 17 is a request from Potomac Electric Power Company and Delmarva Power and Light Company.
Good morning again, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Drew McAuliffe on behalf of staff. On July 15th, 2025, the PHI Utilities, Delmarva Power and Light, and Potomac Electric Power Company filed a request to extend their EV fleet programs to the earlier of June 30th, 2026, or the launch of the proposed EV Phase 2 programs and a completion of a request for proposal for a program implementation vendor. PHI Utilities are requesting permission to continue operating their current suite of EV fleet offerings, which were approved by the Commission in 2022 and are otherwise due to sunset on September 14th, 2025. The company's request, similar to BGE, would not require any additional funding beyond what was already approved for the programs in 2022. And as stated previously, staff does not recommend closing a program and possibly reopening at a later date. Therefore, because there's no additional cost to extending the program, and again, to keep continuity within the EV programs, staff recommends the Commission grant the extension as requested by the PHI utilities. Thank you. I'm available for questions.
Seeing none?
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Taylor Beckham here on behalf of the PHI Utilities, Delmarva Power and Light, and Potomac, or PEPCO. Have nothing to add. Thank you to staff for their recommendation, and we are available for questions.
Okay, I move we grant the requested extensions authorizing the companies to continue their EV fleet programs. Commissioner McLean?
Aye.
Commissioner Linton?
Aye.
Commissioner Sushman?
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe?
Aye.
I vote aye.
Item number 18 is a waiver request from Ascension St. Agnes Hospital.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Cameron Walton on behalf of staff. On the podium with me are Barbara Weber of the Engineering Division and Kenneth Albert of Staff Counsel Division. On April 18th, 2025, St. Agnes Hospital filed a request to waive an interruption and penalty fee assessed by BGE due to failure to cease gas usage during a scheduled interruption period from January 20th, 2025 to January 23rd, 2025. On November 20th, 2024, the hospital experienced a critical boiler system failure. It was later determined that the boiler software had been corrupted, making the system inoperable. This led to major damage to key components, including the submaster controllers and oxygen sensors, which are essential for fuel oil ignition. To maintain required indoor temperatures, the hospital brought in a temporary boiler from Kentucky and flew in technicians to assist with repairs. The failure was traced back to NextGen, a contractor that had taken over system maintenance earlier that year. NextGen had incorrectly told St. Agnes that the original system provider, Micromod, was out of business, but that several former technicians from Micromod could continue to provide service via NextGen. The hospital provided this information to its primary boiler service vendor, ACI, which subsequently replaced Micromod with NextGen. It was later found that NextGen misled their capabilities of providing the necessary software upgrades to the boilers. When a full software update was needed, NextGen's improper handling triggered further system failures. Shortly after the initial failure, St. Agnes was able to directly contact Micromod for guidance to restore its boiler system. Since the November incident, the hospital has spent over $590,000 on boiler system repairs and upgrades, with costs expected to reach $670,000. In addition, they have re-engaged with Micromod as their system maintenance provider. On December 10th, 2024, St. Agnes passed their physical interruption tests and believed they would be ready to cease gas in the event of an interruption period. Prior to the January curtailment, all three boilers at St. Agnes were tested annually. Additionally, over the past 3 years, St. Agnes voluntarily transferred to fuel oil in response to pipeline operational flow orders. St. Agnes's boiler plant engineer estimates that there was about 6 interruptions per year, each for at least 4 hours. Ahead of the scheduled interruption on January 17, 2025, St. Agnes ordered more than $25,000 in fuel oil, expecting to comply with the directive to cease gas usage. While the boilers were operating on natural gas at the time, they unexpectedly failed to switch to fuel oil during the curtailment period due to the failure of the oxygen sensors. Despite multiple attempts to restart the system, they were unable to interrupt the gas usage. The hospital kept BGE informed in real time throughout the event. After the interruption period, St. Agnes states all necessary repairs have been made, and they will continue to exercise 1 boiler per month on a rotating basis to ensure the ability to comply with future interruption events. St. Agnes Hospital, a not-for-profit healthcare provider in the Baltimore area, has indicated that the penalty fee assessed by BGE will shift its financial standing from a modest profit to an operational loss. To absorb this impact, the hospital may be forced to make cuts in other critical areas. The hospital does not plan on switching to firm delivery service, as the savings from being an IS customer can be delegated to other programs and services. Given St. Agnes's good faith efforts, the contributing factors to noncompliance, and the financial impact of the penalty, staff recommends a 47% reduction, resulting in a final penalty fee of $1,250,326. This reduction is based on the hospital's documented costs for boiler repairs, fuel oil purchases, and savings from using interruptible service. Subtracting these costs from the original penalty yields a remaining balance of $1,260,501, which corresponds to about a 47% reduction. Thank you, and I'm available for any questions.
Questions for staff? Commissioner Sushman.
Good morning. Okay, so I'm actually having a little bit of trouble understanding sort of the sequence of events. Okay, so in November of 2024, there was a catastrophic failure in their boiler system.
Correct.
Okay, and there was a lot of sort of communication between NextGen and the software company, and so through the month of November, I'm assuming things were happening. A temporary boiler was brought in, and things were being made. Changes were being made to the system. Do you have a sense of when that the original boiler was brought back online?
So not exactly the exact date, but I do know that they passed their physical interruption test on December 10th of 2024. So I'm just assuming anytime before that date.
Okay, that's actually kind of critical because it seems like they continue to spend money even after that date, and clearly the system wasn't working in January. So I'm trying to understand when the physical interruption test occurred. You said December 10th.
Yep, 2024.
Okay, because in your buck sheet it's December 11th, but so it is December 10th.
December 10th is when the actual physical interruption test occurred, and then they got noticed that they.
And then they got noticed the following day. Okay, so as of December 10th, all the changes were made. The temporary boiler was not in operation anymore. The permanent, the original boiler was fully functional as of December 10th.
Yes, to my knowledge, because I know that they said the temporary boiler was sent back to Kentucky, I believe, is where it originally came from.
Okay, because I hope the hospital will be able to answer that question. Do you know what BGE does when it does a physical interruption test?
I can. Let me see. I can defer that to the company. I think they just kind of run through, like, they interrupt the boiler system and just.
Are they physically on site?
I believe so. Yes. I would defer that to BGE to go into more depth about it. But from my understanding, I believe they are on site conducting the test to see if the boiler can interrupt gas.
Okay, but clearly it didn't work in January.
Right. Yeah. They
Okay.
failed to.
So they failed to interrupt over a 2-day period. Is that what? How many days did they fail to interrupt?
It was for 71 hours. So
71 hours.
For one, they were kind of having trouble keeping it consistent. I think for at least an hour they were able to cease gas usage, but it wasn't fully effective.
Okay. And for the 71 hours, do you have the sense of whether anybody on the BGE system lost gas as a result?
I'm not familiar with any information regarding.
I'm getting a shaking of the head now. Is that?
Actually, why don't you step forward and speak into the mic? You know, go ahead. Sure.
Barb Weber, PSC Engineering. I'm in the gas pipeline safety program also. So yeah, to my knowledge, there were no interruptions.
Okay, so the hospital failed to interrupt gas service. Nobody was impacted as a result.
Correct.
Okay, and then the total penalty is $2,473,566. Can you tell me how that was calculated?
Yes. So I believe the original, I think St. Agnes had it as 2.4 million, but I think it is around 2,359,000.
A little more than 2 million.
Yeah,
right. That's a big number.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you're saying how that penalty fee was, or the
Please.
reduction?
Right. How did you calculate that amount?
So the original penalty fee was already conducted by BGE in the notice they sent to St. Agnes.
Okay. And how is that penalty calculated?
It's usually by the number of hours of noncompliance, and then it's like a certain formula, number of hours of noncompliance. I believe. Let me see. Let me go to my worksheet. One moment, please. Let's see. Okay. Yes. So it is the average of the hourly non-compliant in terms times 24 hours times the number of days in a month and times the distribution penalty price, which is the distribution penalty price is 0.9258.
Okay, and how is that number determined? Is that in the regulations?
It's in the tariff for the
In the
distribution
tariff.
penalty price, yes.
Okay. All right, that's all I have. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, so actually, before I turn to the hospital, let me take the Office of People's Counsel because they have separate comments.
Good morning, Chairman Hoover, Commissioners. Mark Shebus for the Office of People's Counsel. OPC supports staff's recommendation for a 47% reduction in the penalty, provided that the hospital, Ascension, can provide more information and explanation on 2 points. The first is the extent to which Ascension actually substantially reduced its gas usage during the outage period. The tariff makes clear that it's not enough for the company to make good faith efforts to reduce gas usage. It actually has to substantially reduce usage to qualify for a waiver, whether that's a full or partial waiver. Ascension briefly discusses substantial reduction, that prong of the test, in its filing, and it points to its usage on the middle 2 days of the 4-day interruption period. And it's true that the usage for those 2 days was lower than any of the other days in the month. It's also true that the usage on the first and fourth days of the 4-day outage period was higher than, I think, any other day of the month. I think it's likely that the company, or that Ascension, took steps to reduce its usage, but in the absence of information and explanation of what it actually did, it's not clear from the numbers. The numbers itself don't tell a clear story. So we think that for Ascension to satisfy that prong of the waiver test, they should provide more information and explanation about what they did to reduce their usage, notwithstanding the failure of their boilers. The second issue, and this is, Commissioner Sutphin, goes to your line of questions and points possibly to a larger, more systemic issue, is the fact that their boiler system failed only 5 weeks after they passed the physical interruption test, which is intended to ensure that the system will not fail. November 20th, they had this catastrophic failure of the system. 3 weeks later, on December 10th, they managed to pass a physical interruption test. 5 weeks after that, their systems failed. So the fact that their systems failed appears to show that the physical interruption test also failed to do its job. I don't know, because we don't understand either exactly how this test is performed, what went wrong. All the problems that Ascension has pointed to as resulting in the failure in January are traceable to what happened in November before the physical interruption test was conducted. So clearly what they thought was fixed and what the test found was fixed on December 10th was not fixed. The test failed. And I don't know, again, whether that's due to the information that Ascension provided to BGE, whether that's due to the protocols of the testing itself, but clearly something went wrong. And if it went wrong in this case, it's possible that it could go wrong in other cases as well. There's not a lot of detailed information about BGE's testing procedure in the tariff. It describes a 2-part test. The first is to test communication protocols, and the second is described as a physical interruption test, which does suggest that somebody is physically testing equipment. It's not clear exactly how the company passed the test on December 10th, only for its boilers actually to fail only 5 weeks later. The tariff says that it's a 4-hour period, I believe. I think it's either 4 hours notice in 6-hour period of interruption or vice versa. But it's essentially BGE gives an interruptible service customer notice, relatively short notice, that it's going to be performing the test. And then the test tests the equipment for a relatively short period of time. Ascension discusses in its filing that it made good efforts to pass the test. The concern that's raised here is that they made efforts to pass the test, but not efforts to ensure that its boilers would actually function when an interruption event was called. So we think that we need more information both from Ascension and from BGE about how this test determined that their boilers would work, only to find 5 weeks later that they completely failed. And I'm available for questions.
So, any questions for OPC? Commissioner Sussman?
Okay, so, Mr. Shibas, I understand that getting more information is important. I've already expressed concern in previous proceedings about the sensibility of having hospitals and nursing homes be on interruptible rates because they can never be interrupted in any meaningful way. I mean, maybe there are aspects of what they do that could be interrupted, but the reality is they can't. And we also have been told by BG that there are priorities of interruption, and hospitals are never interrupted. So the idea that they are on an interruptible rate, I think, is lunacy. And the reality is we're facing the current situation. I'm also concerned. I mean, from People's Council, you represent people, and I'm concerned about a penalty that could have the effect of reducing their ability to take care of people. So I understand that I think they should never be on interruptible rates in the first place. They were experiencing catastrophic failure. Clearly, the boilers were never fixed. In BG's priority of interruption, they would never be interrupted anyway. But we're asking them to nevertheless interrupt themselves, which they cannot do, and then because they couldn't do it, because they are actually taking care of people, we're assessing more than $2 million fine, which is going to make it really hard for them to do the very things that we want them to do. This seems like a continuation of Jabberwocky. It doesn't make any sense to me. None of this makes any sense to me. I'm not sure what I'm asking you,
Well,
but
I'll respond. Thank you for those points, Commissioner Sussman. I'll respond to each of the two sort of points in turn. First, on whether customers that provide essential services like hospitals should be on interruptible rates in the first place, and then the impact on this penalty if the Commission were to levy it in full. On the first point, as far as I know, OPC does not have a position on whether customers of this kind should be allowed to be on interruptible service, which I think is what you're asking. Fully agree that customers like this have to have fuel. They have to provide heat for all the essential services that they provide. If we had a working interruptible service paradigm in place, such that when an interruption event was called, they could successfully switch to an alternative fuel, then the risk of any impact would seem to be minimized. Clearly, we don't have that right now. So I think you're raising a good question. We don't currently have a position on that, but it's something that we can think about more. On the second point, the impact of the penalty, we don't have reason to doubt the company or the Ascension's representation that if this penalty were levied in full, they would go from being in the black to being in the red. It's also true, based on a review of information from the Maryland Health Services Cost Review Commission, which is an independent agency tasked with, I don't fully understand exactly how they regulate. Commissioner Barvey, you're nodding your head. I probably know a lot more than I do. But they collect a lot of information about hospitals posted on their website, and that includes the hospital's tax filings and reports that go into detail about the hospital's financial conditions. Based on the most recent reports filed by or issued by the Commission and the most recent tax filings available from Ascension, which are both 2023, the hospital has operating expenses of around $500 million a year, around $500 million every year. Now, a $2.5 million fine is not an insignificant portion. It's about 0.5%, which is not insignificant. But we don't necessarily agree that in order to pay that, the hospital would have to cut back on essential services. The hospital, with $500 million of expenses, it's spending money on a lot of things. Salaries, obviously, are a huge component of that. Hospitals spend money on all sorts of things. And a review of the tax filing, in 2023, the hospital spent around $1 million on bonuses for its 13 or 14 highest paid employees. Now, I'm not suggesting that was a bad decision. I'm sure those are highly competent professionals who are doing really good things at their jobs. I introduced that simply to remark that it's not at all clear to OPC that if the company had to pay a penalty, it would necessarily have an impact on their services. I think that depends on decisions by Ascension about where it finds that money. All that said, we do recognize that this is a hospital that provides essential services to people, disadvantaged people in a poor section of the city, and we do not want to see their services impacted. And it's for that reason that we support staff recommendation to cut this penalty in half.
Okay, Commissioner Clinton. Okay, Commissioner Barve.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm going to ask you a question that I asked one of your colleagues at OPC on a similar case, and that is, do you ever take, when you're making a decision as to how to advise us on situations such as these, do you ever take into account the possible impact, public policy impact of what I like to call moral hazard? I'm very concerned that it is so much cheaper to hire a lawyer than it is to do the right thing in the first place. And this is a problem I've had throughout my entire time in the General Assembly. Do you ever factor that in?
Thank you, Commissioner Barber. That's certainly a concern. I think, another way to sort of discuss that issue is whether, what effect do penalties serve in this instance? I think one thing they would serve is that if a customer, the particular customer or any other customer, will take notice that, oh, this is for real. And if we do not maintain our systems to be able to interrupt our usage when the utility calls an interruption event, then there may be real consequences for us. So yes, I think that, yes, we absolutely take moral hazard issues into account generally, and specifically that is an issue here. I know the Commission has other cases of this nature before it. My understanding is that there will be still more that come before us. I don't know what percentage of total interruptible customers had issues like this, but it seems it's a not insignificant percentage, which suggests that customers are not taking the ability to interrupt their services as seriously as they should be under these tariffs.
This is a little far afield, but I know that the People's Council, the actual head of your agency and the members of your agency have all, in my observation over 2 years, have also been very concerned about the environmental impacts of various fuel sources. I mean, oil is a lot dirtier than natural gas, and if they were on firm service, they would continue to burn natural gas and they would never burn oil. Have you ever taken that into account in these kinds of situations?
It's a good question, Commissioner Navarro. I'm not sure whether we've had discussions about that. I can check internally. I think yes, fuel oil is dirtier when it's burned than gas, and I think that is a factor that needs to be considered. The additional incremental cost of purchasing additional gas if the customer does not switch, that's another factor. I think all that has to be weighed in the balance. But I don't know what discussion we've had on, and I think this goes to Commissioner Suchman's question about should customers like this that use significant amount of fuel, whatever it is, and provide essential services, should be eligible for switching in the first place. And I think the potential impact on those services and the potential environmental impact are both factors that the Commission could consider in thinking through that.
Final thing, I've been a member of this commission for 2 years, and it seems like all of a sudden we're getting a lot of cases like this. And so I'm concerned that we're encouraging bad behavior by overusing our authority to grant waivers, but I'm curious, you've been with the People's Council for how long now?
I started in February 23.
Oh, okay. Never mind. I was going to ask you if you sensed a sudden upsurge, but I guess you and I are you and I started at the same time. So
Yeah.
oh well. Never mind for that.
Yeah, Commissioner Barber, my understanding is that, there hadn't been an interruptible event called by BGE before this since 2019.
I see.
So it's just, and I think, to your point, it's possible that customers on these rates started to anticipate that they wouldn't be called, and perhaps relaxed their maintenance a little bit more than they might otherwise have.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Any other questions for Commissioner McLean?
Sir, is your concern more with the pit test or the fact that they passed the pit test and then failed?
I think those are interrelated concerns. I'm not sure how to pull them apart in this situation.
Because I guess if I'm the hospital, I have this problem, I spend several $100,000 to correct it, I pass the test. I mean, if I'm the hospital, I'm thinking everything's good. So I don't know why. I understand your need for more information on your second prong, but I mean, if I'm the hospital and I pass the test, I should be ready to go.
If the test is actually testing the ability of boilers to operate on an alternative fuel for the kind of time period that would be required for an outage.
Sure.
That's my question. Again, they're testing for only a few hours.
Right, but that goes more to the test. It's not necessarily the hospital's issue. Okay, all right, thank you, sir.
But,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry, Commissioner McLean, just one. It's potentially a hospital issue too, because in the absence of knowing how this test is done, it's not clear to us how much BGE is depending on information provided by the hospital. And so we don't know, did the hospital provide all the information it should have? Did it provide access to all the equipment it should have? There are two ways to pass a test like this. One is an actual physical interruption test, and I think, again, we need to know more about how that's done. The second is for a certificate from a professional engineer to certify that, yeah, we've run the tests, we're confident that this equipment can function as it needs to during an interruption. I think, if there were a certification from a professional engineer, then we'd have somebody who could be here today to say, here's exactly what we did. But we're not in that situation today.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let me go to the hospital now.
Great, thank you, Chairman Hoover, Commissioners. If it please the Commission, Barry Naum, I'm an attorney with the law firm of Spillman, Thomas & Battle in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I've had the honor of appearing pro hoc vice in numerous proceedings before this Commission. Since we did not file a formal docket, I've not had the opportunity to move for admission. So my purpose here is just to introduce the St. Agnes team that will be presenting the hospital's position. Representing the hospital today are Michael Finnegan, the Chief Operating Officer of St. Agnes, Steve Vach, the Manager of Energy Supply for MedExcel Facilities, and Frank Pace, Facilities Manager for MedExcel Facilities. Because this issue is one of critical importance to the hospital, we have prepared a detailed and fulsome response to the staff's comments as well as the OPC's comments that I think may help to answer some of those questions that have been posed already. And with that, we would just ask permission and indulgence for the hospital to present that. And if so, yes.
So, is your intention to have multiple speakers?
So Chairman, Michael Finnegan, Chief Operating Officer, will present the hospital's position, but the other two are available for questions.
Okay, that's fine.
And I would just like to state that, subject to if the commission needs to waive the appearance requirements, I'm also available, more than willing to answer questions as well.
Yeah, we can take care of
that. Michael Finnegan, Chief Operating Officer.
Okay.
Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to present St. Agnes's position on this important matter, and thank you particularly to the commission staff for their thorough review and just for being so easy to work with. We at St. Agnes are proud to serve our community in Southwest Baltimore and our surrounding areas. In times of extreme weather, our neighbors can be found seeking refuge in our facility, and everyone is welcome to stay until they have a safe place to go. We offer our services 24/7, 365 without disruption, and we're immensely grateful for the support of our associates, patients, and community. I'd first like to note that St. Agnes takes its responsibility to curtail natural gas consumption very seriously. As a hospital dedicated to serving some of the most impoverished residents of Southwest Baltimore, we view every measure that lessens our cost to provide that service as critical, life-saving, and life-enriching initiatives. This includes our willing obligation to interrupt natural gas service when called by BG&E to do so. And we regret the mechanical and software error that caused this failure in January. Our substantial investment of almost $700,000 in our fuel switching technology, both before, during, and after the curtailment event, demonstrates our dedication to keeping our hospital operational all day, every day. And our investment in alternative fuels and programs such as this are precisely aimed at that continuity of life-saving services. We're appreciative of the detailed attention that staff have given to this investigation, and we support staff's findings regarding the factual circumstances and the background of our unfortunate inability to curtail natural gas consumption during this past winter's polar vortex, including the factual summary of St. Agnes's gas consumption and reduction during this period. At the time of the curtailment, no daily high temperature exceeded 30 degrees Fahrenheit and was much lower. St. Agnes was holding multiple critically ill patients in our emergency department. Our medical overflow unit was at maximum capacity, and the overall census of the hospital was at 108% capacity. We had 8 very sick babies in our NICU, and we had a full slate of surgeries scheduled each day. With those facts in mind and agreed to, we do disagree, though, with some of staff's conclusions. Specifically, while we're grateful for staff's acknowledgement that the waiver of the enormous penalty levied by BG&E is warranted, St. Agnes disagrees with staff's determination and calculation of that waiver amount. It's based on 2 observations. First, it appears that staff's recommendation of a 47% partial waiver of the assessed penalty, as opposed to a greater or a full waiver, is primarily based on a finding that St. Agnes failed to properly conduct due diligence in selecting a subcontractor that was ultimately responsible for the boiler failure in January. Our understanding of the standard to satisfy a waiver, whether full or partial, is based on the provisions of BG&E's tariff and requires a finding that St. Agnes acted in good faith before, during, and after curtailment noncompliance. This finding must be based on 4 specific criteria within that tariff. Specifically, we have to demonstrate efforts made prior to the interruption to be fully compliant, the reason why full compliance was not attained, such as a sudden failure of alternative fuel equipment, efforts to correct noncompliance during interruption, and actions after the interruption to be fully compliant in the future. Staff clearly found that St. Agnes satisfied each of these criteria and concluded that St. Agnes indeed acted in good faith in attempting to reduce gas consumption, and did indeed substantially reduce consumption. Despite this, staff also concluded that St. Agnes's waiver should be limited to only 47% of the penalty, again citing an unspecified failure to apply adequate due diligence when selecting a subcontractor that caused the boiler failure, even acknowledging that it was the subcontractor and not St. Agnes that was responsible. Staff does not state precisely what that due diligence failure in selecting a contractor was, or how St. Agnes could have acted differently, so we're only left to speculate. And that speculation seems to hinge on BG&E's first criterion regarding efforts made prior to the interruption to be fully compliant. If that's the case, then we respectfully submit the following in our defense. Staff acknowledges that St. Agnes did indeed demonstrate adequate efforts prior to the interruption event. There's no requirement that St. Agnes is aware of, either in the BG&E tariff or in the Commission regulations, to make an affirmative demonstration of due diligence in selecting subcontractors to handle our boiler setups and operations. And staff never issued any inquiries to St. Agnes regarding our due diligence process, at least not to our knowledge. Absent any clear explanation, we're left to speculate that staff's concern relates to our employment of our subcontractor, NextGen, as opposed to our prior subcontractor, Micromod. St. Agnes does indeed have a robust due diligence process. It weighs inputs such as response times, locally owned status of businesses, pricing, service continuity, and others. With the information we had at the time in early 2024, of all the criteria I just described, we determined that service continuity was the priority criterion which drove our decision to follow our known technicians to NextGen. If you know one boiler, you know one boiler, so maintaining our relationships took priority. The availability of a qualified boiler subcontractor in our immediate area is also extremely limited. we had to fly techs out from Kentucky when we were having our immediate and catastrophic failure. And we had no reason to question NextGen's suitability for that role until the catastrophic failure later that year in our fuel switching equipment in November. We feel that due diligence is easiest reflected on in hindsight, and would like to emphasize what was conveyed to staff in the course of this investigation, that the hospital immediately terminated NextGen and re-engaged Micromod after the November 2024 catastrophic failure, less than a year after making the switch and more than 2 months prior to our failed interruption event. We made immediate attempts in course correction, some of which were short-term fixes and others are the long sustainable fixes that we have since put in place. And despite a successful test prior to January, that still proved inadequate. If St. Agnes had accurately addressed, if we have accurately addressed staff's due diligence concern, we respectfully believe that the final recommendation regarding 47% waiver, it's not consistent with the staff's own factual findings and goes beyond St. Agnes's obligations to demonstrate our good faith actions. We assume that staff's due diligence assessment must be related to BG&E's first tariff criterion regarding efforts made prior to interruption. If so, then St. Agnes also feels that this puts too much weight on one of the 4 criteria against the substantial demonstrations that the hospital has otherwise made in support of the other equally essential 3 criteria. Staff's limited 47% waiver versus St. Agnes's 53% remaining obligation empirically demonstrates this imbalanced weighting. The second observation is that even if the Commission accepts that St. Agnes somehow failed an unspecified due diligence test, it appears that staff's calculation of a 47% waiver is arbitrarily connected to curtailment benefits and the amount of investment that the hospital has made to ensure compliance moving forward. We don't take issue with staff's inclusion of the amount of benefit that our actual successful curtailments have provided to the BG&E system and to ourselves during the interruption event. We believe it's appropriate in calculating the waiver, at least in part. Staff, however, also cites our investment of almost $700,000 in system improvements to ensure ongoing interruption as the only other portion of the penalty that should be offset by the waiver. This reasoning is a little unclear to us as well. That investment was certainly required to bring our fuel switching technology to full compliance. It is all that is required. It's a necessary and proper investment on our part, and it's based purely on staff's calculations. It would seem that despite all of our other good faith actions, this is the only acknowledgement of the hospital satisfying BG&E's tariff requirement to demonstrate that a waiver is justified. It's not consistent with the express standards of the BG&E tariff. The tariff does not tie an amount of a waiver to a capital investment of a customer. It merely establishes good faith standard based on those 4 express criteria made by the customer to ensure compliance has no nexus to BG&E's tariff, BG&E's system, nor St. Agnes's failure to fully respond to the interruption events in January. Additionally, by offsetting the penalty only by the dollars spent in system repairs by St. Agnes, staff's calculation appears to be arbitrary. Based on that reasoning alone, if we had spent $2 million or more to repair our boilers, then staff seemingly would have agreed to a full waiver of our penalty. In our interpretation, staff's calculation appears to reflect the opinion that St. Agnes must be held responsible for the entirety of the cost assessed penalty, despite having satisfied the criteria for justifying a waiver. St. Agnes again respectfully suggests that this position is inconsistent with the terms of the BG&E tariff and is contrary to the concept of a waiver of penalties based on good faith conduct. We believe we have demonstrated all of the necessary elements to meet the requirements in the BG&E tariff for a full waiver. As described to staff, we believe St. Agnes is a cornerstone of the Southwest Baltimore community. We offer $46 million annually in charity care to underserved patients. With immense financial pressure facing hospitals across the country this year and immediately in the years to come, we are fortunate enough to project a small profit in fiscal year 2026, which started this July. This penalty is not waived, and even if it's waived at 47%, it still is a loss for us. The impact of this penalty is seen in reduced capacity to admit additional patients who require hospitalization, the elimination of unfunded programs designed to improve the health of our populations, delay of expansion initiatives, and reduced capacity to fund additional charity care and our own capital investment. We absolutely accept responsibility for the burden of capital investments in our system, and we request a waiver that actually alleviates some of the additional burden that this assessed penalty imposes. Considering all factors, including staff's apparent agreement that St. Agnes issued both a good faith effort to reduce consumption despite our system failure, We respectfully ask the Commission to consider a full waiver of the assessed penalty, or at a minimum, a genuine waiver of more than the staff has recommended. St. Agnes is also in receipt of the OPC's letter from Monday, recommending that the Commission deny our request for a waiver of penalties or submit additional data to justify our request. We find this recommendation troubling in its implications. The OPC is apparently concerned that St. Agnes didn't substantially reduce natural gas consumption as required by the BG&E tariff. However, we provided detailed information to the Commission about the reductions we were able to achieve through several brief switches to alternative fuel that we were able to make during the curtailment period. The numbers are validated through text messages directly with BG&E. And additionally, the weather records from those dates showed high temperatures never exceeded 30 degrees Fahrenheit. It contradicts that assertion that warmer weather may have caused this benefit. Hospitals across the country have strict regulations and life safety codes about ambient air temperature and sterilization requirements that are tied directly to our accreditation. Disrupting operations could mean the inability to follow sterile procedures, keep our NICU babies warm, or even provide life-saving care to those in our community impacted by the extreme cold. Simply speaking, we cannot close our doors on obligations to care for our patients safely. We're also required by Life Safety Code to maintain our equipment. Our boilers since 2009 have passed inspection annually. We continue to maintain and exercise them, and we've successfully exercised each boiler once per month since the curtailment event in January and since we completed the capital infrastructure investment that was required due to the singular failure in November. If OPC questions whether we actually curtailed gas consumption during this period, the answer is yes. We did reduce gas consumption, and we've actually accurately captured that economic benefit. OPC also argues that St. Agnes should only receive a waiver of penalties if we can explain why our system passed HIT tests in December and then subsequently failed to interrupt in January. This request also seems to go beyond the tariff requirements in demonstrating good faith conduct where sudden failure of alternative fuel equipment provides a qualifying criteria without requiring the customer to provide an explanation. Simply stated, the system suddenly and unfortunately failed in January, despite our best efforts in the preceding months and despite passing BG&E's pit test in December. If OPC is concerned, as they indicate they are, with the sufficiency of BG&E's testing protocol, then this, we believe, is an issue-specific question. This, we believe, is an issue outside the specific question this morning before the Commission. We respectfully do not believe that St. Agnes should have to pay a penalty to justify investigation into this issue. And finally, OPC argues that granting a full waiver would represent an extraordinary concession that undermines the integrity of the tariff. With all due respect to the OPC, we disagree with that argument. The BG&E tariff states what the tariff states. Yes, the tariff provides for penalties for noncompliance during interruption events. We agree that those penalties exist as an incentive to ensure that customers reduce consumption when called on and maintain their equipment to be able to do so. But the tariff also explicitly provides for both full and partial waivers of those penalties if a customer does substantially reduce consumption and otherwise meets the single standard of good faith conduct in attempting to reduce consumption. As previously stated, that good faith conduct standard is based on the customer satisfaction of those 4 criteria. Most importantly, the tariff states that the Commission may choose to reduce or waive entirely these penalties. This is entirely the Commission's decision. The OPC appears to suggest that the Commission is bound to enforce these penalties in order to send a harsh message to large customers, even those who have acted in good faith and maintained our equipment for a decade or more leading up to this event. We respectfully ask that the Commission consider St. Agnes' satisfaction of the good faith standard contained within the tariff as sufficient support for our request for a full waiver. At St. Agnes, we're proud to serve Southwest Baltimore. We are grateful to provide life-saving health care to our patients, specifically the poor and the marginalized. We want to invest in the sustainability of our organization, our community, and our infrastructure. We're thankful for our partners we have in this endeavor, and we respectfully request that the Commission consider the unique circumstances of our operations and the impact of this waiver request and the recommendations on the community that we serve. Thank you. I'm available for questions.
Commissioner Barbe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Remind me what your position is again?
The Chief Operating Officer.
Okay. So I presume that you're very familiar with Maryland's all-payer hospital regulation system.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Is it fair to say that there are a lot of hospitals in the city of Baltimore that take care of indigent patients?
There are.
Okay. And doesn't for the sake of my colleagues, I'm going to read a description of what Maryland's all-payer system is. It says, since late 1970s, Maryland has operated an all-payer system for hospital services. An independent commission, and I believe that's the Health Services Cost Review Commission, the HSCRC. An independent commission establishes the rate structure for each hospital. This has had the effect of eliminating hospital costs shifting across payers. It spread more equitably the cost of uncompensated care. So basically, and the HSCRC is like the PSC for the hospital system, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It's true that hospitals that have a lot of indigent patients tend to have a lot of uncompensated care, correct?
Correct.
And isn't it true that the all-payer system spreads those costs evenly throughout the state of Maryland, so that unlike some states, we don't have charity hospitals?
It's partially true, yes. There are no charity hospitals. We do have a disproportionate share built into our per patient rates. It also restricts the total revenue that each hospital gets per year. So that is fixed in 6-month prospective increments. So a penalty like $2.4 million, there's no revenue for St. Agnes to be able to grow or to find additional sources of funding. It has to come out of our expense structure.
Okay, but the point I'm attempting to make here is that we are not the state of Florida or the state of Texas, where we refuse to spread the cost of care for indigent patients across the entire system. Maryland has been very progressive in this respect. And by the way, you do great work.
Thank you.
But so do all the other hospitals in the state of Maryland, and hospitals like Shady Grove Adventist or Holy Cross in Montgomery County, they pay a portion of this state burden for uncompensated care, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So let's talk about this whole concept of, look, it's hard to get inside the mind of people to what their motivations are and how they make decisions, but I personally have a problem with completely waiving the penalty. I have a problem with it because, I have, like Commissioner Suchman, I have a fundamental problem with certain types of industries being on interruptible service tariffs. I have a problem as an environmentalist with the reliance on fuel oil backup generators. In this case, it's not a generator, but actually it probably is a generator. And so I can see an argument for some sort of reduction for the waiver, or some sort of a waiver for the penalty. But I'm having a lot of trouble seeing my way clear to a complete get-out-of-jail-free card here. Make your argument again.
So our request for a full waiver is based on sort of, our true belief that we've met the obligation of our participation in the tariff. We have invested significant capital infrastructure. We have to make very quick decisions. We agree we've benefited from the interruptible service rates, but we have to be able to switch to generator power to keep our facility going from a regulatory perspective anyway. So there's a lot of symbiosis between where we have to be to continue ongoing operations regardless of whether we have a curtailment event or it could just be a power outage or a hurricane or a weather event. So there's symbiosis between our ability to participate and our willingness to participate in the financial benefit that we've received over the previous years from participating. You know, we are proud of the investment that we've made into our physical plant. You know, these boilers were put in 2009, and they have served us very well for the last almost 16 years. We've passed our inspections annually. We've put in our maintenance. We have excellent plant operators, and so leading up to the events that occurred in 2024, there was no need for us to be concerned about our ability to disrupt or not. It was only when these boilers required a software upgrade and we realized that our subcontractor was not acting in good faith that we realized we had a big problem. So the waiver comes from the full waiver request comes from the language that states that we've made significant investment before, during, and after, to the tune of almost $700,000, which is not insignificant for a hospital our size. That we acted in good faith and that we communicated with BG&E throughout the disruption to let them know exactly what was going on. So based on the verbiage of the tariff, full or partial, that we feel like we meet that justification. We do agree though that there needs to be incentive, there needs to be teeth. We worry if our peers in the community are not taking it as seriously, as not taking disruptability as seriously as we do. We share that concern. If there were a hospital downtown that were not to take its boiler maintenance seriously, we would have an overflow or a surge situation at St. Agnes to the point where we would be maxed out in our resources and we would create a dangerous situation for our patients. We need reliability in this system. We need our peers to be held to the same standards that we hold ourselves accountable to. In the remarks that I just made, if the commission is unwilling to consider a full waiver, then a secondary request of ours is substantially bigger waiver, though, than the 47% that the staff is recommending.
One final point. The HSCRC does set your rates,
Correct.
and they will set your rates based upon the totality of your financial situation. They're not going to let you go out of business, though, right?
We hope not.
How often have hospitals actually been put out of business by the HSCRC over the last 30 years?
I can't answer that question.
It's very close to zero. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Commissioner McLean? Commissioner Sutton?
Good morning. So the hospital has been on the interruptible rate for how long?
It's been a number of years. I've worked for St. Agnes for 4 years, and we've been on the program since I've worked there.
Okay. Do you know if you entered the program when you first installed the boiler in 2009?
Can't answer that
Okay.
question.
Is there somebody in the audience that can answer that?
Our team is relatively new, so unfortunately, no, I can't answer that question.
Okay. So have they been there longer than 4 years?
I'm the oldest one in the group, believe it or not.
All right. But as long as you've been there, you've been on the interruptible.
Yeah,
rate.
I sat personally, as long as I've been there, and I've sat, our plant engineer, his name is Steve. I sat with him in his office to just go through, the history. He was there in 2007. I can't say, he couldn't tell me whether we've been on that program and for how long, but I believe we've been on since 2009.
Okay. And in your 4 years there, and maybe in your conversation with Steve, has there ever been an instance where BG has asked you to curtail?
We have done this small, about 6 disruptions a year, but we've not had a curtailment event since 2019, I believe.
Okay. So.
But we've been able to disrupt regularly about 6 times a year. Sometimes it's 4-hour increments, and sometimes it's others. And then we test the boilers annually.
Okay. But I'm a little confused. So BG has asked you to disrupt about 6 times a year?
Sorry, can I ask my
Please.
person to weigh in?
Commissioner Suchman, Drew McCall on behalf of
Yes.
So the last BGE full interruption event was 2019. That's
Okay.
why you haven't had any of these requests since 2019.
Okay. That's kind of what I wanted to.
Yeah, that's why we've had so many this summer, because we had that particular.
Right.
cold
So, but really, there hasn't been a situation where you've actually had to perform. Yes, please.
Greetings, Steve Ock. I'm the manager of energy supply, and I am a PE, by the way. And I wasn't at the pit test, but I do not think a PE at the pit test would have caught this problem. It was a software issue. So what Ascension does is we set up, for every polar vortex, we set up an emergency response team consisting of operational people and safety people to address cold weather issues. Fuel switching is one of those. So during those events, our gas prices get really high, and transportation pipelines often ask us if we're on interruptible rates to interrupt, or we work with our supplier to interrupt voluntarily. The last 3 polar vortexes, so we've had one a year on a holiday weekend every time, we have voluntarily interrupted over 20 hospitals to assist pipelines. BG&E is the only utility that has asked for an actual interruption at the utility level, but out of the last 4 years, St. Agnes was able to voluntarily interrupt their supply and switch to fuel oil for 2 or 3 days on our own voluntarily. We have the history if you want to see it.
Okay. Yeah. Actually, could you send that to us? That would actually help with the record, so that we have a better sense of your engagement on this. So you will actually be asked, and you will voluntarily switch off, and do you get compensation other than the not using the gas during that period?
Other than reducing our risk for penalties, and potentially gas prices could maybe get higher than fuel oil. So regularly gas might cost $5 a decatherm. Fuel oil costs $25 to $30 a decatherm. So it needs to be a large surge to financially justify it straight up, but there are pipeline penalties for balancing errors.
Okay. So for the November failure, is that when you spent the $640,000, or is this $640,000 you've spent because of
the November failure triggered the $670,000 capital project that started in beginning of December, and repairs lasted all the way through the February-March timeframe.
Okay.
And so then we started our routine exercises, our monthly exercises, in April.
Okay.
So we've now completed 3 of those.
So when the pit was done, you were still in the process of making these modifications.
Yep.
Can you explain to me why you had confidence that you were going to be able to pass the pit when you did?
The pit is a much more limited in scope test. 6 hours with a 4-hour notice period. At that point, we had made some short-term fixes that allowed us, and we had moved some parts from one boiler to the next to be able to what we thought was going to be a successful test. It was a successful test, but those short-term changes did not sustain into the long term, and so we had to, we continued with the long-term plan, which is a full replacement of some of the software components. But at the time, we had made a few temporary.
Okay, so at the time you passed the pit, you still knew you had some problems that
we had a whole project underway, correct?
Okay,
And we
so-
I believe
so-
we still had the temporary boiler on site. We tested with the with our own boilers.
Okay, so at the time that the pit was done, there were vulnerabilities in your system you were aware of.
We were in the midst of the large project to replace.
Okay, so for example, if BG had called for interruptions on December 15th, there could have been a vulnerability in your system then.
Correct. Well, at December 15th, we still had our temporary boiler flown in. We kept that for about a month. So on December 15th, we would have been able to interrupt with a temporary boiler.
Okay, but when the interruption was called in January, you'd already sent that
We
boiler.
sent it back because we were confident in the progress we had made. and the actual inability to disrupt was not something we had expected.
Okay, but there were still, I mean, you knew that there were problems and there was the potential for problems, even when the interruption was called. Now, talk to me about what you have on on plant in terms of backup power. So do you have backup for electricity in addition to gas?
Yeah, I'm going to defer specifics to our facilities director, and he can give you some very, very detailed responses to that question, if that's okay with the commission.
Good morning. My name's Frank Pace. I'm the Director of Facilities for
We just
St.
need you to come
Yeah,
to the
need you
to
to-
the microphone a
Yeah,
little bit
just
closer.
Kind of lean into the mic.
Right.
My name's Frank Pace. I'm the Director of Facilities for St. Agnes.
Okay.
As far as our backup energy, we have two 2.4 megawatt generators on site for our electrical backup or any diversions off of electrical power. We also have three Wilcox boilers that service the hospital. Typically, we run those boilers at varying times throughout the year, depending on the seasonal variations that we're dealing with as far as temperature.
Okay. Could you have relied on those boilers and still interrupted gas?
After the pit test, we believe that we could. We weren't really sure, honestly, of the depth of the basically vulnerability that we had with our software at that time. We learned that when we couldn't comply with the interruptible phase of the process. The pit test was completed. We did that through the process of conversation via email, with our agent for BGE. Through that process, they are not on site, but what they do is they monitor our gas meters to make sure that there is no consumption of gas during that period of the pit test. Once we meet that threshold time that they've allotted for us, they notify us, and then we can go back to our natural gas supply.
Okay.
And that was the process that we did follow.
Right, but when you installed those boilers for backup, you didn't install them to be able to participate in an interruptible program. You installed them for backup for the hospital, so that you always had the ability to keep people warm and comfortable. And
Are you referring to the temporary that we put in?
no.
Or-
But I'm talking about the plant
our
system.
itself?
Yes.
Yes, we have three boilers, and all three boilers are operable at any one time. We use them based on the seasonal variations. But yes, if one boiler goes down, we have two additional boilers for backup.
Okay, and they're all fed gas.
They're all fed gas with the alternate fuel.
Right, but the alternate fuel again is intended to give the hospital backup power or backup fuel.
The backup fuel under Joint Commission criteria, we're required to have an alternate fuel should there be some interruption in our primary supply.
Right.
And that's what we have. Yes, ma'am.
Right, but that's intended to keep the hospital. You didn't design your system so that you could participate in the BG interruptible program.
Not
you
at
just
all.
you just happen to be able to participate because you have this backup power.
That is correct.
Okay, and do you intend to stay on an interruptible rate given your recent experience?
So because of the $700,000 investment and the substantial replacement of the software is all completely new and reinstalled at this point. We had made the decision this year to stay on interruptible service. We are going to have to reflect on that moving forward just to make sure it's still in our best interest. So at this time, we are hoping to take advantage of the rate reduction that comes with it. We're confident in our boilers and the work we put into it. We will regularly make sure that if it's no longer in our best interest, or if this commission feels like the industry itself shouldn't be on there.
Well,
not
it's
a
that-
conversation we're willing to have.
I mean, the issue is whether it's in the best interests of the system, because you'll never get cut off. Even if you don't respond to the interruptible signals, BGE will never cut you off. So they will cut someone else off, and that's the concern I have also, is that for, there's an interruptible program for the integrity of the system. Just like you have boilers that are there for backup, you are the BGE backup. And if you can't be relied on to back up, then others will have to sacrifice their own gas. And so that's the concern I have, is that we're also, as much as we're mindful of the great work that you do, we also have to protect the system. And that's if we don't have a program that's working, as I think this most recent outage directive that gas be curtailed demonstrates that the program's not working. Because we've been, you're not the first ones to come before us.
If I could, I would respectfully
Please.
disagree with that point. This was a very specific vendor-driven failure. We have 15 years of successfully testing our boilers, voluntary disruptions.
But you've never been asked to do the kind of interruption like just happened, and you failed. And I understand that and we've heard all kinds of reasons, good or not, from others, but they were all reasons. But the reality is that the time when we've asked you to perform, you failed. So even if it's always worked out great, that one moment where there could be a whole variety of different reasons, and the system can't accept that. If there's a failure and it really has consequences, then it's going to be a failure for somebody.
Yeah, I accept that. We certainly accept that point, and we have always found symbiosis between this program and our accreditation regulations. We've endeavored to the best of our ability. The people standing behind me are some of the smartest people in plant engineering that I've ever met or worked with. We are exercising more rigorously than we ever have before since January to make sure that we can be an active participant should we need to. But also, when I think about as a hospital leader, what keeps me up at night, it's just what you described. And so the tariff calls for us to take specific action after the event to make sure that regardless of a waiver or not, we're not in this position again. And we feel wholeheartedly, for the sake of our patients, as well as the sustainability of our organization, that we have taken very serious steps to be able to care for our patients continuously.
And what would be the financial consequences of moving off the interruptible rate?
It's about $480,000, $80,000 per year in rate discounts.
Okay. All right.
So it's enough that we see value there.
Yeah, no, I appreciate this. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so I want to ask about one of the characters in this episode, NextGen.
Sure seems like it.
So you mentioned that you had terminated the contract with NextGen,
Correct.
but has there been any attempt to try to get some of this money out of their hide?
That I will have to defer. We have provided lots of information about the situation to the General Counsel's office at Ascension. And so at this point, as a hospital level, some issues are controlled at the hospital level, some issues are controlled at the our parent system level. That is an issue that we've escalated. I can't say much more than that. And
All right.
we-
So, and just so I'm straight on this, so St. Agnes is part of a larger healthcare system.
Correct.
So,
Ascension.
And Ascension, how many hospitals are we talking about?
About 100 across the country.
Okay, so this issue about, if we don't waive the fine or significantly cut the fine, that you now have to make decisions about patient services, why can't you go to Ascension and get the money from them?
I wish. Each hospital in each market is responsible for its financial sustainability. We have accountability to our system. We also have an accountability to ourselves to be able to sustainably run our operations as a hospital and then as a market. So, would this penalty make us go out of business tomorrow? Based on the comments about the HSCRC and based on our affiliation with Ascension, the honest answer is no. But we do have an accountability to having a break-even income statement, and so we do need to figure out how to get to a point of individual financial sustainability.
Because I got to tell you, I did find it a little concerning that, you put both the Office of People's Counsel and us in the position of, look, either waive this penalty or, poor people aren't going to get admitted to my hospital, which is, a relatively tough choice for us. So I guess I'm concerned about just the financial situation since you are part of this larger organization, which I'm assuming is making a fair amount of money that.
Nope.
And again, the other issue is, you identified this other entity that apparently didn't do its job enough that you got rid of them, and they seem to have skipped off, into the darkness, and they aren't being held responsible for this.
I wish I had a more thorough answer for your question, sir. I know that there is action being taken to try to hold that company accountable. Whether or not that will come to fruition, I can't say at this point.
All right. So last question. Your opinion is that 47% isn't enough of a waiver. I guess it's staff's opinion and OPC's opinion that a full waiver is not justified. So what are you looking for between 47 and 100 as an offer?
So our position is that we'd be willing to accept a waiver equivalent to what our annual savings would be, so $480,000. And we find that to be a reasonable request of the commission.
And what would that, do we know
No, not the top of my.
what that sort of works out to be?
It's about probably 25%.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would like a 75% waiver of the cost, in essence.
Yeah, and as I said, $500,000, $480,000 is significant. It's a significant financial hit for a particular month or year for our single hospital. And we if that, we agree with the integrity of the program. We agree with many of the concerns that have been raised. We don't want to come before this commission and try to make a case that we believe we followed the letter of the tariff. But if the integrity of the program suggests that there should be some sort of compromise, then we feel that forfeiting the financial benefit we would have received by participating seems to be a reasonable suggestion in return.
Okay. Okay. Any other questions?
Sorry, Chair Hoover, if I may.
Sure.
I just want to address some of the comments about the due diligence of St. Agnes and a data.
Well, actually, let me do this. I want to actually hear from BG&E, so let me get them up there, and then I'll have you react to what everybody has said.
Sounds good.
So that works. So, and as far as BG&E goes, there's probably going to be a number of questions because we've been through this drill before with some of the others. So to the extent that you have to go back to the shop and get answers, don't feel like, we expect you to have every answer today. So.
Oh, I've been
Okay.
communicating Teams messaging, so I have lots of answers. St. Agnes has been on the schedule since at least 2001, so it's been a fairly long time period. I'll say, and sadly, that's how long I've been at BG as well. So, I've got a lot of history. We really didn't, I shouldn't say that we didn't have interruptible, when we obviously had interruptible rate schedules. We revamped the whole process in probably like the early 2000s, 2011, 12, 13, where we put in a lot more teeth. We didn't have the tests beforehand. We didn't have kind of the penalties weren't as cumbersome. So it was really kind of in the early 2010s when we, really upped their game on making sure people could comply. We started having interruptions. I think the first one that I recall was in like the 2014 timeframe. So St. Agnes would have been subject to that. Asking about why we have the sudden uptick, I think it's because we, like someone said on staff, it was, the last one was 2019. And so what we've noticed is that, if you go a few years without one, despite us having the physical interruption tests, despite us, sending communications, we do find that customers get lax. We had, I think, interruptions in 14, 15, 16, and when you have multiple years, first year, not great, second year, much better. If you have 3 years in a row, by the third year, I think, you barely have anyone not complying because people realize, kind of what they're up against. Correct that with these physical interruption tests, we are not on site. Basically, we are saying, hey, what I believe we do, and I'm testing my memory a bit here, is, we will give people notice that, hey, sometime the week of November, whatever, we're going to do a physical interruption test. Under the tariff, we don't have to give you any more. I believe it's 4 hours, the other one it's 6 hours. We're going to give you, that much notice. That's the minimum. And so then you're going to be ready to participate. They are generally 4 hours. And when we were developing the test, there was a lot of, discussion back and forth. On the one hand, you don't want to inconvenience these customers unnecessarily. But on the other hand, you do want to make sure they can comply. So, first of all, we don't do the tests until, November, because we want it to be at a time period when we're fairly confident they're going to be using gas because the weather has changed. Again, do we want to have it be for 72 hours? Because, that's potentially, if you have a real interruption, that's how long it could be that, it could be longer. But again, our main concern is, do they have the ability to interrupt? And that's all we're really checking. I will say St. Agnes, and I don't know the exact timing, but St. Agnes actually failed the first interruption test we held on November 19th. Now, looking at their comments, they said that they had a catastrophic failure on the 20th. I don't know, perhaps that was in conjunction with our first test, but, we had the test, they failed, and under our tariff, we do give people, again, we're not trying to penalize people. We're trying to make sure that they can get everything in working order. And so we give them the opportunity to have a second test. And, it's usually about a month later, which it was in this case in December, to say, hey, go get your stuff, fixed. We'll come back, we'll test it again. We did that, and they passed. Again, finding out, I'm not part of all the discussions, but, and I don't know how much detail we get into with them about how they were able to test, but hearing now it was because they brought in this backup, apparently. So, November or December, they passed, we're good. We think they're going to be able to comply. As I said, we give a minimum of 4 and 6 hours depending on, there's 2 interruptible rate schedules, we give that. But we we never limit ourselves unless there was an actual gas emergency, like where someone struck a pipe and, we have to act immediately. We're giving customers much more notice than that. In this case, the interruption was starting on January 20th. The week before, we're looking at the weather forecasts, we're looking at usage up until that point, and, we're saying, hey, we're gonna need to interrupt next week. So we actually started our notices on Thursday before, the 16th. Thursday and Friday was when we were, I think we gave notices electronically on the 16th. On the 17th, there was a lot more, actual phone calls, emails, stuff like that. So we were giving people a lot of time to, again, do whatever they had to do. And I did see that St. Agnes said on I think it was the 17th, that they ordered fuel. So again, we're giving people a lot of notice so that, with the gas event, you kind of, it's kind of like a hurricane. You kind of get a sense that it's coming. So we're giving people notice to be able to comply. Trying to think what else I meant to say. There was a lot of conversations, things I wanted to point out. I will say St. Agnes did fail an interruption in 2016, but it looked like that was, looking back at the notes about that, that was like, I think just a kind of a delay. They were a little bit late starting. Not a big deal. They were, it was fairly minimal dollars. But, so again, we have asked them to interrupt, and, generally, other than that one time, they have been able to. There was discussions about, 6 interruptions a year and that, and I think that's all, that has nothing to do with us. We have, again, not had an interruption on our system since 2019. Now, if they're getting their supply off the interstate pipelines, that might be where that's happening, and, that's a different kind of, reason and why you're doing it. But, and I'm glad to hear that they are, having to do that more often to see that, they are able to switch over. But, that's not us calling on them. It hasn't been since 2019. So I think I've exhausted everything I wanted to say proactively.
Actually, let me, Commissioner Linton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, I think.
Nope.
Nope.
Nope. Good afternoon. Just missed it. All right. Oh, good afternoon. I did have a couple questions for you, and you touched on a few of the topics I wanted to address. First, regarding the test, you noted in your opening comment that the company is not actually on site for the test. So does that mean or suggest that you are just monitoring the customer's usage through a meter?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, we're getting real-time meter data to do. And I don't know, it's really not practical. We have, I want to say somewhere in the 100 to 200 interruptible customers. There's really no way we could be on site.
Okay, so as part of your knowledge of that this is obviously an interruptible customer, I know with residential customers you may have some knowledge about the kind of HVAC equipment they have in their home. For an interruptible customer, are you familiar with the kind of system they may use to interrupt?
I can't say that because we have large customer service representatives who do, talk with the customers. They might, it's not anything though that we are tracking or that, somehow, goes into any system or that. I mean, again, our LCS reps through conversations might know, but for the most part, we are not questioning, what they have or why they think, we have, commercial customers who, choose just not to completely shut down. They don't have any backup, but because of the nature of their operations, they can just shut down. So, we don't get prescriptive about, what they have. It's really left to them to figure out whether they can and how they can.
Okay. So different parties that have spoken that spoke this morning attributed different value or weight to the test that the company offers. What value, in your opinion, should the commission apply to that test?
I think the test, customers should be, they're on interruptible. They know they should be doing this themselves. Do I think we have an obligation to do it? I don't know, practically speaking, but I do think, we find it necessary to help customers and to help us. So, again, they failed the first interruption test that we have, and the way it's designed, as I said, it is intended to, hey, at the start of the winter, kind of give people a nudge that, winter's here, are you ready? And they failed, and, they seemed to, do what they needed to do and were able to interrupt when we did the second test. And so, that was satisfactory to us, they complied with the tariff requirements.
Okay, so if once that decision is made or interpretation is made by the company, and today you've heard different parties suggest that it was obviously very important versus some that have suggested that it might not have been as valuable because they didn't understand what you actually did. So from a commission perspective, obviously as you're the company that could issue the fine that is relying on these interruptions to occur, should we conclude that if the company, or in this case the customer, met the requirements of your test, that has some greater value than if they didn't?
No, because again, it's just a test. At the end of the day, just because they passed that test doesn't mean that it absolves them of their obligation to comply when the time comes.
Okay. Regarding the fine, does the company have any opinion on the staff's recommended modified number? Was it 40? I heard different numbers today. So, obviously you recommended the full fine.
No, we obsessed the fine pursuant to our tariff. BGE has, and again, I've been doing this since they've started. We're pretty agnostic. I mean, we understand that customers, the fines were there to incent behavior, but at the same time, customers, have exigent circumstances that they're dealing with, and I think, not trying to pass the buck, but then this was all part of the design of the tariff about giving customers the ability to go to the commission to get a waiver and have staff evaluate it. We didn't want to be the ones doing that evaluation, kind of, being, part of the, the issue. So, we generally don't get in, saying whether it should or shouldn't be waived. I think BGE would be against full waiver for any, or a complete waiver for any customer, because again, that to me negates the whole purpose of having it. But to say whether it should be 25%, 50%, 75%, or 100%, I don't think we generally have an opinion.
Okay. And my last question, I know my colleagues also have some. If you could just tell us on the day that, at the period of time when the company requested these interruptions, were there any other impacts on the overall gas distribution system, either for some large customers or those that were smaller? Was there anything that, in other words, was there an impact that had this company or this customer not interrupted, and in this case, as they didn't, that there was some other result that we could attribute to that?
No, there wasn't. We did have enough compliance.
Okay.
And I'll say, it's not like every single customer that's on our interruptible rate schedules has to interrupt or there's a problem. It's very specific of who, people sign up, and depending on where they are in the system, how much they do, it's, so at the time period, I get a little uncomfortable with a suggestion that, well, there weren't any negative impacts, but there could have been, depending on if other people had not complied, if there were other circumstances, you just don't know. So whether or not there were any negative consequences to the system otherwise, to me, is not a factor that should be considered.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Barve.
Well, one of my questions was asked about your position on the staff recommendation, but just broadly speaking, we're expecting to have more climate disruption and more an acceleration of interruptions for gas and electric as the years go by, aren't we? I mean, isn't that?
I think gas is a little hard to say because the state is pushing people to electrify. So if, people start electrifying in masses and we don't change, we don't take gas pipe off the system, in theory, you have more pipe to that's available, more capacity. I don't see that happening anytime soon in the amounts that, would really make a difference. But Like I said, it's been kind of, hit or miss. We had a few years where we had interruptions pretty regularly.
Mhm.
Then we went a long time period. It's not just cold weather, it's, how sustained the cold weather is. Sometimes it can be, when it is gonna be, and I don't study the numbers, but, I don't think it's a coincidence that these interruptions have happened a lot on, MLK Day has just historically been a really bad day for the gas system. For some reason, it tends to be cold, and I just think maybe because people aren't, are at home, maybe but I think we've seen usage at that time period that, it's always on a Monday, and so I think that's been a real trouble spot for us.
Well, I mean, as a utility that is involved in gas and electric, I mean, I think it's safe to say that it's in the broad societal interest to make sure that interruptible service tariffs are respected.
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay, thank you.
Senator McLean.
Afternoon, ma'am. Do you think the pit test should be more rigorous? I know you threw out a 72-hour time frame, I think initially in your comments. I'm not necessarily saying that should be it, but should it be more rigorous than what it currently is? Or do you think that would help?
I think I would, but I think we'd get a lot of pushback from the customers. They don't like, I don't think they care for the pit as it is, even, because we are causing them to have to interrupt, I think in some cases it's viewed as unnecessarily. They feel like, hey, we're taking care of our stuff. Why do you need to double check us? But, perhaps that's something that can be, that it's absolutely a risk that, you're checking their ability to interrupt, but, when they are going to a backup fuel source, do they have enough fuel? There's no limit on how long interruption can last.
And OPC had suggested maybe a third-party independent, an engineer being on site during the test. Would that be of any value?
To have the customer do it as well?
I guess to have somebody that's not affiliated with the hospital and not affiliated with the utility be on site to verify whatever you're seeing on them when the test is ongoing.
We do with customers that have a good track record. I think we do let them get a PE certificate, kind of like an off year, so that they don't have to kind of instead of, having to do the physical interruption test every year, we do allow them to get a PE certificate, from a professional engineer. I don't know that it has to be an unaffiliated, like I don't know that they have to go out to somebody outside their company. I think it can be somebody with it. But again, I think that the thought is that, hey, when you're a PE, just like if you're a lawyer, you have professional standards, and
Right.
it shouldn't matter that it's your employer. So I think that's why we got comfortable just using, any PE.
Okay, all right. Thank you, ma'am.
Commissioner Sussman.
Okay, so on November 19th, you know this because it's in your records.
Yep.
Okay, so on a day other than November 19th, the hospital was informed that you were going to be doing a pit.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know the day that they were first informed of that?
No.
Okay, but they were informed that within a couple of days we're going to be doing a pit.
Yeah, I think it's usually, like I say, we say, the week of, we're going to do it.
Okay, and then can you describe what the failure was?
It was a 4-hour interruption, and they used an average of 145, which, I don't know, they kept using. They didn't curtail entirely. So it looks like they just, I don't know, I don't have the records to know if they actually lowered their usage or if that just was a complete failure. I don't know the nature of that. I
Okay.
can get that.
And it's not in the record whether this was a complete failure or partial failure.
I don't have it. I probably could get it.
Okay.
More details. All I just know is that it was 145 therms an average over the 4 interruption.
Okay. And then once you had that information, how did you communicate that to the hospital?
You know, at that point, we're making phone calls. The large customer service reps are making phone calls to talk with them about what the issue was and, you know, getting assurances that they're working on it and then informing the customer that, you know, we will be having a second test. I don't know that we tell them again exactly. I believe we do kind of a similar thing where we say, hey, the week of X, we're going to have the second, you know, kind of backup test. And, you know, that's what you need to be aiming for to have your system back in place. And if you don't, you know, if you fail that, then there will be a penalty, a failure to comply with the second pit basically gives them the same penalty as if they missed a real interruption.
Oh, okay, so that's a pretty significant penalty for a second pit.
Yeah, again, it's only going to be 4 hours, so from the standpoint of the duration, you know, it probably will be less. But yeah, it's pretty severe. So
Okay,
you've got
and
an incentive.
if there's a third, is there a moment where the company just says you're out of the program?
No, we haven't gotten to that because I think in all the years that we've had it, there's only been one customer who has failed the second time. And that was actually earlier this year, Cloverleaf, the dairy. That's the one I know of. So most customers are able to, by the second one. pass.
Right. They appeared before us.
Yes.
I believe you were here then too. So for the November 19th failure, would they have been communicated about the failure that day?
Oh, I believe so, yeah.
Okay. So it's
If
kind of
not,
interesting.
The next day.
Okay, so it is kind of interesting for, maybe it's a coincidence that the very next day, they encountered severe technical difficulties according to their filing. I find it a little troubling, and maybe you can explain to me why the November 19th pit failure was not included in your explanation of everything that happened. It seems to me that that's a relevant piece of information. Maybe I'm missing something.
If I could clarify, it is one and the same failure. We started, when we made the switch on the 19th, that inability to switch, that is the same failure that came into the,
Okay.
that went into the.
Well, but this is a pretty important omission on your part. You mention the success of the pit in December, but you didn't mention the failure of the pit in November. I find that troubling.
And we don't mean to mislead at all. To us, when we say we had a catastrophic failure in November, it was one and the same.
Yeah, I can tell you that I don't read this as being anything other than you discovered a failure as opposed to you being told by BG&E that you had a failure. I'm not going to ascribe bad motives in this, but I am troubled that piece of information was missing from your filing. And then missing from the second, a more detailed explanation. You understand that is, and maybe your lawyer can explain to you that those acts of omission are pretty significant from my perspective.
Yeah, and I assure you that was not our intent. Our intent was to tell a linear story of events. And
yeah, you're just missing a really, really important
yeah,
piece of
and
information.
We're happy to amend any filing we have to include.
Well, I don't know that you have to because now it's on the record. So, okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions for BG&E? All right, so let me ask People's Counsel one thing. So, St. Agnes made an offer of a 75% waiver as opposed to this complete waiver, or staff's 47, which you support staff's 47% waiver. But what's your thought about a 75% waiver?
Chairman Hoover, I wouldn't want to answer that question without conferring with the People's Counsel himself and OPC leadership. My initial reaction is that the company has benefited from this rate for a number of years. We've heard average of $480,000 a year. I think for past 3 years. BGE said they've been on the rate for a long time, so they've received benefits for being on this rate for a considerable amount of time. I'm not sure that being relieved of that benefit for a single year is adequate in the circumstances. But if the commission would like, I can take that back to OPC leadership and find out what our position is on that.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so let me turn to staff, and you can, respond to everything that everybody else has said, but I also would like you to specifically comment on the different, the position of 75% versus your recommended 47%.
Absolutely. Thank you. I would first like to start off with the comments made by St. Agnes regarding their due diligence. In a data request, it seemed, from my understanding, that they just went off of the word of technicians as to that their main service provider was no longer in business. If I read from here, it says, in 2024, NextGen approached St. Agnes and stated that Micromod was no longer in business, but that several former Micromod technicians could provide service continuity via a separate entity, NextGen. Given St. Agnes' familiarity with these technicians, St. Agnes took this information to ACI, who ultimately replaced Micromod with NextGen. So it's just, maybe the St. Agnes would be able to fill in some of the details about that, but it just seemed there was no proper due diligence as to do the research to see if Micromod was still in business until after the failure had already occurred. And towards my second comments, regarding just the overall reduction, I think we're going to keep the 47% staff recommendation, and we would also like to note that just over the past 3 years, they've saved about 1.4 million from the 480,000 savings. So even with our reduction in the penalty fee, they're still saving about 190,000 from the failure.
Okay, Commissioner Sussman.
When you spoke with the hospital, did they ever communicate to you that they had failed the initial pit on November 19th?
I actually didn't even know they had an original physical interruption test. They only mentioned this December 10th.
Okay, so they also didn't mention it to you either?
No, it wasn't in the filing at all.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McLean.
Sir, I think the hospital's concern with the due diligence, and I'm sure they can correct me if I'm wrong, was that due diligence isn't a factor within the tariff. So how are you factoring the due diligence into your recommendation?
Gotcha. So I think it just goes along with how the commission has also just preceded the rest of the interruptible waivers. So yes, it is a large basis on the good faith efforts, but I think there's also external factors that also go into that, such as the due diligence. Sorry. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think what we're going to do is actually take this under advisement. I mean, there's enough kind of disputes and concerns that we have that I want to actually issue something in writing, so.
Item number 19 is an application from Simpson Property Group LLC.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. Michael Spiegelman on behalf of staff. This item concerns a request filed on July 30th, 2024 by Simpson Property Group LLC to install an energy allocation system. The system is for 181 unit apartment building located at 7000 Wisconsin Avenue, Bethesda. Public Utilities Article Section 7-304B2 states that an energy allocation system may not be used for direct billing of energy costs to a tenant or an individual dwelling unit unless the Commission approves the system in accordance with this subsection. Comar 2026-0201 further specifies general approval criteria for energy allocation system, namely, first, approval may be granted upon demonstration by the owner that the system results in a reasonable determination of the cost of the energy use within dwelling unit. Second, testing and inspection of the energy allocation system may be required for the Commission to make such a determination. And third, testing and inspection of any furnace, appliance, or other equipment used in conjunction with the energy allocation system may be also required. Simpson Property LLC has contracted with Breeden Mechanical Incorporated for the installation of energy allocation system that will allow the owner of the apartment building to allocate to the tenant of an individual dwelling a portion of the cost of electric energy consumed based on usage. Simpson Property Group LLC initial application contained all information required under Comor 2026, and subsequent data request responses has given staff no causes of concerns in regard to the system itself. The apartment building construction is complete and use of energy allocation system would comply with requirements under the relevant Comor provisions. Therefore, staff recommends that the Commission approve the energy allocation system for the 7,000 Wisconsin Avenue apartment building located in Bethesda, Maryland. Thank you.
Okay, any questions? Okay. If you have any reactions, just, I mean, if you just want to identify yourself, that's fine. I assume you're fine with his recommendation.
We are. Yes.
So just tell us who you are for the record.
And I'm Jennifer No. I'm the Regional VP for Simpson Property Group. This is Pete Edmondo. He's the building engineer.
I see. Okay, all right. With that, I move to grant the company's request for approval to use the energy allocation system for the apartments located at 7,000 Wisconsin Avenue, Bethesda, Maryland. Commissioner McLean.
Aye.
Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
Commissioner Barbe. I vote aye.
And item number 20 is an impoundment property tax rider reconciliation from Maryland American Water Company.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Commissioners. Mark Riley on behalf of staff. On July 8th, 2025, Maryland American Water Company filed revised tariff pages updating the Bel Air impoundment property tax with an effective date of August 1, 2025, along with a reconciliation of the PTR. The company is proposing to refund the overpayment amount to customer accounts by applying a one-time credit to all accounts. This filing was submitted in accordance with Order 89022 and case number 9487 issued on February 5th, 2019. Staff found the annual property tax calculation amount of $152,470 in Attachment B was accurate, and it was $14,425 lower than last year's because of a lower assessment. Staff also found the proposed surcharge rates in Attachment C were sufficient to collect the $152,470 property tax amount. The bill impact to a residential customer using a 5/8 service is a monthly decrease of 12 cents from $1.40 to $1.28. Staff also found the calculations in Attachment F were accurate and the rates were sufficient for a one-time refund of the prior year's property tax overcollection of $14,985. The bill impact for a residential customer using a 5/8 service is a one-time credit of $1.51. On August 1st, 2025, the company filed an application for the authority to increase its rates and charges for water service and to amend its tariff provisions. It's now case 9808. Exhibit 6 of this filing contains amended tariff provisions. After this case is completed, the company plans to discontinue the property tax rider. Staff recommends the commission, one, authorize the company to refund the overcollection amount on attachment E of the company's filing as a one-time credit on the customer's bills in accordance with the customer's service amounts shown in attachment F of the company's filing. Two, accept for filing tariff pages in attachment A of the company's filing with an effective date of August 1, 2025, in compliance with commission orders in case 9487. And three, waive the 30-day notice and publication period required under Public Utilities Article, Maryland PUA, Section 4-203A.
Okay. Any questions? Take it you're from American Water.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. Todd Chasen from Gordon Feinblatt on behalf of Maryland American Water. We appreciate staff's analysis and I hope that you'll approve it.
Okay. All right. With that, I move we authorize the company to refund the overcollection amount shown on attachment E of the company's filing as a one-time credit on customers' bills in accordance with the customer service amounts shown in attachment F of the company's filing, and except for filing the tariff pages in attachment A of the company's filing with an effective date of August 1, 2025, in compliance with the commission orders in case number 9487, and waive the 30-day notice requirement for public notice and publication period required under Public Utilities Article 4-203A. Commissioner McLean. Aye. Commissioner Linton.
Aye.
Commissioner Sussman.
Aye.
I vote aye. And- Oh, Commissioner Barface, sorry.
What am I, chopped liver?
And I vote aye.